Welcome back to another episode of Hold Ya G.A.S, where I give you guys my hot take on the latest audio gear, plugins, software, without all the bullshit, marketing spin, and hot air. Today we're taking a look at the Audient EVO 16. Are Audient selling us a game changer like they claim, or are they selling us down the river on this one? Let's take a look. The Audient EVO 16 is an 8-channel interface that looks to break into the home studio market, taking aim at drummers, project studio owners, or anyone looking for more than the 2 or 4 channel varieties of interface that are dime a dozen nowadays. And cutting to the chase, there are 2 main things that people are absolutely losing their shit over when it comes to this particular interface. Number 1 is the price, and number 2 is the smart gain feature. More like fart gain. Anyway, let's leave the gimmicks for now and start with the price. Now, for this interface in Australia, we're probably paying a little bit more than other countries, which is classic. We tend to pay more because of shipping and taxes and all this kind of stuff. And that's just normal fare for instruments and audio equipment. But the EVO 16 is selling here for $7.99. Now, to be honest, at first glance, this actually seems like quite a steal. $7.99 is not a bad price for 8 mic preamps. Combine that with 2 high Z inputs on the front panel, 8 line outs, 2 headphone outputs, an audio loopback function, and 24-bit 96 kilohertz conversion recording. And then to add on top of that, it also has 2 ADAT in and outs for expansion up to another 2 additional 8-channel interfaces, which could potentially give you up to 24 ins and outs. And there's not a single other interface on the market with these exact same features at this price point, right? Right? Well, if you do your due diligence, a quick Google search will actually show that there are a lot of 8-channel interfaces, and this space has become quite a lot more competitive in recent times. And if all you need is 8 mic preamps, there are actually some options that are a fair bit cheaper than this interface. And before we get into all the typical usual shit slinging in the comments section about this product versus that, or this brand versus that, or this preamp versus another preamp, at this price point, typically the conversion quality and preamp quality is pretty much the same, and any differences are quite minimal. What differs one 8-channel interface to the other typically is the I/O and expandability and any extra options or software that come bundled with the interface itself. So as far as preamps, line outs, headphone outs, speaker outputs, and ADAT expandability, the EVO 16 actually isn't as radical a change in the market as Audient might have you believe. There's already the Focusrite 18i20, which basically parallels the same I/O options of the Audient EVO 16. There's also the PreSonus 1824, which has admittedly one less ADAT I/O, but for the same price range. And at least these 2 interfaces have actual dedicated channel metering, but we'll get to that soon. And that's not to mention the even cheaper interfaces that are available, like the Tascam US16X8, which offers kind of similar I/O to that same PreSonus model for only $500. And we can't forget the Behringer UMC 1829, which comes in at $400. Even the Arturia's version of an 8-channel interface, the Audio Fuse, comes in close at around $1,000. So there are quite a few options in the 8-channel interface market that come into this kind of ballpark figure, or even less. Now, let's dive into the real marketing spin. Smart gain. Oh no, the robots are taking over. Now even us lowly audio engineers are being automated out of a job, apparently. Or that's what Audient might have you believe. They have this new feature called Smart Gain. Now, what it can reliably do is in 20 seconds of sound checking, you can select your mic inputs and have an auto gain setting where the interface uses algorithmic processing to determine what the best gain setting is on each of the 8 preamps. And this is targeting drummers because apparently setting your gain on your preamps is the hardest thing in the world for a drummer to do, and that's going to eat up crucial time when you're doing a tracking session. But you know what I'm not risking a single mistake on, and I'm definitely not letting some kind of algorithm make a mistake on, is gain staging. There is absolutely no way that I'm ever leaving the decision of what my gain staging will be up to a computer or an algorithm. That is what our ears, eyes, and brains are for, to figure out the best gain staging levels on our preamps. And no matter how hard Audient might make you try to believe that setting gain is, as a process, correct gain settings in tracking can be crucial, and you can call me a caveman or a Luddite or whatever you want, but there is no chance, zero chance that I'm ever using an auto gain setting when setting the levels for my microphones during a tracking session. End of story. Now let's finish by talking about their last little bit of spin, Motion UI. You know what sucks when it comes to hardware? Menu diving. Audient have done their best here to sell everyone on the reason why they have implemented this multi-function screen. And I'm gonna tell you the truth. It's because it's cheaper. You know what's really expensive? Wiring multiple LED lights or different lighting configurations to show separate meters on an interface. That's expensive, time consuming in manufacturing, and I get it. It is way easier to use some kind of digital screen to show metering. And to be fair and honest, their implementation of the Motion UI is pretty decent. I'm not saying that it doesn't work or that there's any real functional problems with what they've done, but if, like me, you come from the days of digital multi-effects rack units or older multi-guitar effects pedal boards and things like that, and going through the rigmarole of diving through menus to set reverbs and reverb times or delays and delay times or any other parameter that you need to do, the EVO 16 will probably give you some serious PTSD. There is nothing worse than when trying to be creative and record something and then being stuck menu diving or using the Konami code to activate or deactivate mute switches or phantom power or any other standard functionality that you would have on an interface. Yes, this display can show the metering of the inputs, but then you lose the ability to see something else that might be vital during tracking, like phantom power, phase inversion, stereo mix volumes, or anything else that you may need to monitor on an interface whilst tracking. And even my current interface, the Zen Tour, suffers from this too. It's a pain a lot of the time having to dive through menus on digital screens, and sometimes simple switches are better, especially than a one-stop multi-function dial. But companies, I'm sure, are going to keep heading down this line when they're building interfaces because it is just so much cheaper to do this. What I hope is they start to make the screens maybe a bit bigger and able to display more so that we're not losing actual functionality on things that we may need in a tracking session. Now, despite all the criticisms I've given Audient about their spin when it comes to Motion UI and their smart gain technology, I really have to give them ups when it comes to the EVO 16's dynamic range. The converters in this interface boast 121 decibels of dynamic range, which is actually really hard to find at this price point and is quite impressive. The aforementioned interfaces like the Focusrite 18i20 and PreSonus 1824C only offer about 111 or 112 dB of dynamic range. And the even cheaper units like the Tascam and the Behringer don't even mention their actual dynamic range on any of their documentation that I could find. And whether you believe hype around converters or not, what this really means is that when you're trying to mix, you have much more detail in the dynamic range of what you're listening to, and therefore can place things better volume-wise in a mix. And this means you're going to make better mix decisions when listening in playback, and also in tracking. So I've got to give props to Audient for this one. Another positive for the Audient EVO 16 is their EVO Mixer, which is their mix control and GUI. This actually looks super intuitive and has some great features, not just for drummers and studio producers and the like. It's also great as an interface for live streaming and podcasters and the like. So good job, Audient. So let's recap. Smart gain, converters, motion UI, the EVO Mixer, and the price. So my end thoughts, if you're looking for an 8-channel interface to record drums or have an interface that has expandability via ADAT, or you'd like to expand your existing setup with ADAT interfaces, the better preamps and conversion on the Audient EVO 16 might actually be a total win for you. And the price is actually really good for what's on offer here. The only thing that would be my concern is the workflow. I like having meters and visual displays, and I absolutely hate menu diving and having to remember like weird button presses to get some kind of functionality. I already have too many shortcuts that I have to remember just in software alone. And I also dislike having to use a mix control software as a substitute for this lack of functionality as well. I'm all for digital displays on interfaces and trying to change the market and make these products better and more affordable, especially if it keeps costs on these interfaces down. But these decisions from the manufacturers as consumers need to make our jobs easier, not harder. Have I mentioned how much I hate menu diving? And let's not pretend like smart gain is anything but a marketing gimmick. If you want to get this interface, get it because of the great converters and preamps and stellar price, not the marketing and spin. I hope you enjoyed this latest video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'm Mitch from the DIYrecordingstudio.com. I'll catch you soon.